Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video I will be speculating about the cast of Australian Survivor Season 5. And the reason I'm making this video is because it's been recently announced that there will be a second season of Australian Survivor filmed this year. Now there was a lot of speculation about this before the announcement, but now that's officially announced, and with also the rumors that it could include a lot of returning players, I thought it'd be fun to talk about who I think could come back for this season. For me personally, I do believe this will be an all-star season. Obviously, it could just be like a fans versus favorites style season, or it could even possibly be just like 4 returnees or something. But I do think it'll be an all-star season. I think it makes sense for them to do all-star season. Now, there's going to be 4 completed seasons by the time of the season filming. I think that's enough, theoretically, to get a really strong cast. But obviously that's all speculation. I could be wrong, but we're going to be making this video based on that speculation, so let's go. So in this video I will be going over the 3 finished seasons of the Network 10 Australian Survivor series. I won't be talking about obviously the 2002 series or Celebrity Australian Survivor, as obviously they're not going to be included in this, as there were different production companies, different everything. So yeah, I mean, also I don't want anyone back from those seasons anyway. I mean, Celebrity Australian Survivor, I think there's a couple people that I wouldn't mind, but I mean, there's no one from Australian Survivor 2002 that I want to see back. I will also be talking about the current season as well, which we are currently 5 episodes into at the time of this recording. Now, I don't know how big of a cast this is going to be either, if they are going to do an all-star season here. Obviously, Australian Survivor's always had 24-person casts. However, I do think a cast of 24 might be a bit difficult to put together. I mean, the casting pool here is only 95 people. So you're going to need over a fourth of the casting pool back to make a 24-person cast. So I do think there's a chance that the cast could be smaller, and I also think there's a chance that the season could be shorter. So let's start it off with Australian Survivor 2016, the first Network 10 season. And first off, Christy is a lock. I mean, there's no way they do an all-star season without Christy. She's the first winner. She had a really iconic moment during the finale. I mean, 2 iconic moments. I mean, the challenge and also the final tribal council. She seems very willing to play again. I think she's a lock. I mean, she was also featured, I believe, at the reunion show for season 2. I mean, I think she is pretty much a lock. I don't see any way that they don't bring her back. And to be honest, this is something else that I thought about. I think they're going to bring all the winners back if they have an all-star season. I think all the winners are willing to come back. And that's something else I should mention as well, is that I think Australian Survivor, the reason why this is a good time to do it is I think it's in a prime spot where almost everyone that they would want back wants to come back as of right now. I think other shows like Survivor US and Big Brother and stuff, they have a lot of difficulty bringing back a lot of the people that they want. I think Australian Survivor, as of right now, doesn't have that. And I think because of that, it's a prime time to do an all-star season. But let's move on. So I think Lee also has a very strong chance of coming back. He was the runner-up of the season. I think that's another thing. I think all the runner-ups could come back as well. The problem with Lee is that he's in the same sort of archetype as like a Matt Rogers, who I do feel like is a bigger lock from production's eyes, but I do still think Lee would probably end up making the cast. I don't think Elle makes the cast. She did come in 3rd. However, she got such a small edit. The shame is that she dominated that season. She was the one to make all the social bonds that allowed her alliance to make it to the end of the game. However, I do think she made a critical mistake in taking Christy to the final 3. I don't think that was a good move for her. Elle is a very strong player, and I just don't see her being asked back, but it would be interesting if she did. I think Flick has a very good shot of coming back. She had the most confessionals of that season. She was a big player throughout that season. She was probably one of the best players of that season. So I think she's probably a lock on the cast here. I think Matt would be interesting. I mean, I could see him returning, as he made it pretty far. He got a decent amount of airtime at points and is still within this Australian Survivor community. So I could see him being back, especially because someone like Nick is unlikely to come back. I mean, Nick is someone that I think would be asked back. I don't think he wants to come back from what I gauge. Though obviously he could have just been lying all the times he said, oh, I want to play again. But I do truly believe he didn't have a great experience the first time he played. So without Nick back, I do think that opens up a spot for Matt, but I don't think he's a lock by any means. I would really, really like to see Brooke back. I think Brooke, while she is an absolute lock, I think she was a very strong player that season. She had the most confessionals at the time of her boot. Obviously, Phoebe is an enormous lock. I mean, she's probably the biggest lock on the board, I would say. I mean, she was the star of the show during the first half of that season, possibly the best player and character of that season. The only issue I could see if they're returning is that, from what I understand, she doesn't live in Australia anymore. But like, Russell Hantz never lived in Australia, so I still think she's pretty much a lock. I would personally love to see a Craig return. I mean, Craig is one of my favorite characters in probably the entire series. I thought he was a strong player as well. He pretty much dominated his tribe, only be idled out of the game. So I would like to see him back. I don't know if he's super high on production's wish list, though, so I wouldn't be completely surprised if he didn't make the cut. But those are the big names for me. I mean, there are other people like Sam, Jenna Louise, Kylie, Kate, Kat, Rowan, and even Evan that I could see returning as well. Even a Dez return would be so funny. I would love a Dez return. It's not going to happen. But, I don't think they're as strong of contenders, obviously, as the ones I've talked about earlier. Now for Australian Survivor 2017, where, as I mentioned before, I think Jericho being the winner of the season, I think he's pretty much a lock. I think he's probably the best character of the three winners so far, and probably the most dynamic player as well. I don't see how they do an All-Star season without him. I think Tara is a pretty good lock as well. She was one of the biggest characters of the season. She had the highest confessional count of the season. She's a unique enough personality for the show that I think she probably makes the cut. I think Michelle has a good shot of returning as well. I don't think she's a lock. I do think she's a bit overrated as a player, in my opinion, but I do think she's still a really fun character. She had a pretty big impact on the end game of that season. So yeah, I mean, she's definitely not a lock, but I think she has a very, very good chance of being on the season. And the same thing goes for Lockie as well, who I think was a massive character in that end game, was pretty much the underdog during that end game. However, I do think he has a lot of competition from his archetype in this sort of alpha male sort of guy. There's a lot of competition for the archetype, so I don't know if he makes it on or not, but I would personally like to see him back. Luke is Luke. I mean, he's obviously on this current season, and I don't know if he wants to play back-to-back. I know he was very hesitant about even playing a second time after his first season. I'm sure production would want him back. It's just a question of whether he accepts or not, and to be honest, I don't know if he will. Which I do think it's a shame that Luke is not wasted, because he is very, very good on this current season. But I do think it's a shame that someone like him isn't going to be on an all-star season. I think Sarah is probably a lock. I mean, not because she was like a massive, massive character by any means, but I do think she got a really positive edit. She fulfills the attractive young female archetype, and she seems to be in the good graces of production, so I would be surprised if she didn't end up making the cast. I think Henry is also probably a lock. I mean, he was definitely one of the bigger characters of that season. He had such a fantastic downfall that, again, I would be surprised if they didn't bring him back. AK should be a lock. I mean, like Phoebe, he was the biggest character and player of that first half. But I don't know if he wants to play again. He's probably one of the ones that I have the most uncertainty about, but I wouldn't be surprised if he at least got the call. So those are the big contenders, in my opinion. I mean, there are a few others I could see getting the call. I could definitely see Tessa having a shot. Annalise would have a shot if it wasn't for a certain other family member of hers that would pretty much be a lock. But if that person can't make it, I could see Annalise being on. A Jackie return would be fun. However, I think there's a similar person in her archetype from the next season. And then Mark and Tarzan are two that I could see as being surprises on the cast, as I personally have no interest in seeing them play again, but by evidence of the reunion show, production and Jonathan himself just seem to love them for some reason. I mean, Tarzan, I kind of get it. Mark, I literally have no clue why, outside of he's like this alpha male, somewhat intelligent sort of guy. I don't know. But let's move on to the first champions versus contenders. And as I said before, again, winners, I think Shane Gould would probably be a likely returnee if she wants to come back. I don't think she's ever said that she wouldn't come back, so I definitely think there's a chance there. I think Sharn is pretty much a lock, as she was a massive character, massive player on that season. She was the runner-up of that season. I don't see why she wouldn't return. I would love a Brian Lake return. I don't know how well he's doing right now, though. I mean, he did get a divorce like immediately after the show. He got arrested in Japan during that time. He was also pretty down during the reunion and in his post-game interviews. So I don't know how he's doing now. I would love to see him back, though. Shawnee would be a great returnee, and I think it's very, very likely, again, one of these sort of younger female sort of archetypes. I think she probably makes the cut. But I'm a bit unsure about Fenella, as they didn't really give her much of an edit, and she was probably a worse player of the two, so I don't know if she ends up making the cut. I could see production bring back Commando Steve for ratings. That's really the only reason you would do it. I mean, who wants to see Commando Steve back? I mean, to be fair, I actually like Steve more than most people. I think he had a lot of like subtly funny moments. But outside of that, he is extremely boring. But that's kind of what made him fun. But again, I have no interest in seeing him return, though. Benji should be a lock. I mean, I could see him being one of these people that turn it down or being like too busy to return or something like that. But otherwise, he should be on the cast. I think Matt Rogers should be a lock as well. I don't see them doing an all-star season without him. And also, same thing with Lydia. I mean, she's pretty much a lock on the board, as evident by the reunion show. I personally don't feel like I need to see Lydia back. I feel like we're going to get the exact same thing, but production seems to love her, so I think she'll be back. I could also see them bringing Tegan back as well. She got really, really big at it, but she does have a lot of competition from her archetype, so I don't know if she makes the cut. I could also possibly see a Zach return. I think that's really just a matter of whether or not production is too disgusted to bring him back or not. I mean, he was a massive character, got a pretty big edit while he was there on that season. Again, a lot of that was because of how negative he was towards his other tribe members, and I just don't know if they would want to bring that back. The final couple people that I would mention here are Moana and Jenna, who were both taken out due to kind of strange circumstances. Moana ended up kind of quitting because she got too sick, and then Jenna obviously injured her leg and then had to be voted out. So I could see production giving them a second chance, though. For me personally, I have no interest in seeing Jenna play again. I found her extremely boring the first time, and while she wasn't the worst player in the world, she was actually in a very strong position before her injury. I have no interest in seeing her play again. So now moving on to the current season, Champions vs. Contenders 2, where obviously I don't have much to go off of outside of the first 5 episodes right now, but I guess we'll talk about it just based on the current edits. I do think David is the strongest possible returnee from this cast. He's probably the biggest newbie character we have, and I could definitely see them bringing him back. Janine has gotten a pretty strong edit so far. I could see her being a possibility. Andy got a very solid few episodes. He's been kind of quiet the last few, but I do think he seems like someone that could be a returnee. I think Abby has had a pretty good run so far. I wouldn't be surprised to see her back. And pretty much the same thing for Pia. I think Sean is a contender. I think John and Daisy and even Baden are probably all people who have at least some argument for returning at this point in the season. But again, this is Australian Survivor. At this point in Champions vs. Contenders, Benji hadn't even had a confessional yet. Yeah, he ends the season with the most confessionals of the season. So you never know. Maybe some of these other characters will really pop up over time. I don't know, obviously, as of right now. But for right now, I think those are the people that I think have a shot of returning. But yeah, that's pretty much everyone I could see being considered for an Australian Survivor All-Star season, especially if that season ends up being what season 5 of the show is. And again, I do hope it's All-Stars. While I do worry about the casting process of it, with the casting pool that they have, there are still a lot of fantastic characters and players that I would like to see back again. And most of them I can realistically see back as well. So that's the video. That's pretty much everything I had to say about the speculative Australian Survivor Season 5. So yeah, thank you for watching.